The morning sun cast long shadows across Seoul as Consul Vextar prepared to meet the human leaders. He stood in his private chambers aboard the massive ship, adjusting his ceremonial robes. The fabric shimmered with threads of silver and gold that marked his rank among the galactic hierarchy. His forearms moved with practiced grace as he arranged the symbols of his authority. The consul had conquered 47 worlds in his long career. Each species had reacted the same way when faced with his overwhelming power. First came denial, then anger, then desperate bargaining, finally acceptance and submission. The humans would follow this same pattern. He was certain of it. Through the viewing screen, he watched the primitive human city below. The buildings reached toward the sky like the fingers of a drowning creature. Their vehicles moved through concrete rivers in predictable patterns. Everything about their civilization showed how limited their thinking was. They built upward because they could not think beyond their tiny planet. His aide, Morkath, approached with the final intelligence reports about Earth. The humans had spread across their world with remarkable speed, but their technology remained crude. They had barely escaped their own atmosphere. Their weapons were chemical explosives and metal projectiles, nothing that could threaten even his smallest escort ship. The humans had nuclear weapons. Of course, most species developed them eventually, but the consul's shields could absorb nuclear fire without damage. His ship's hull was made from materials that did not exist in this solar system. The humans might as well throw rocks at a mountain. Vextar reviewed the relocation plans one final time. The humans would be moved to Kepler 442, a desert world with adequate water and breathable air. They would have basic shelter and enough food to survive. The generous offer was more than most species received. Earth would become a military staging ground for future conquests. The human leaders waited in their government building below. The consul found their architecture amusing. They built everything in straight lines and sharp angles, as if they were afraid of curves and circles. Their art showed the same rigid thinking. No wonder they had never developed space travel. President Min Seo had requested this meeting, which showed she understood the situation. A wise leader would want to discuss terms rather than fight a hopeless battle. The consul respected intelligence even in primitive species. He would make the transition as smooth as possible for everyone involved. His personal transport detached from the main ship and descended toward the human building. The craft was small by galactic standards, but it dwarfed any human vehicle. The transport's engines made no sound as it settled onto the building's roof. Human security forces surrounded the landing area, but their weapons were toys. The consul stepped onto Earth's surface for the first time. The gravity was slightly lighter than his homeworld, but comfortable enough. The air had an unusual smell that he found interesting. These humans lived on a beautiful planet, which made claiming it even more satisfying. Human soldiers escorted him through their building. The corridors were narrow and low, forcing him to duck his head. The walls were covered with pictures of human achievements, which amused him greatly. They were proud of reaching their own moon while his people traveled between galaxies. The meeting room was larger than the corridors, but still cramped by galactic standards. The human leaders sat around a rectangular table, looking nervous and afraid. Their primitive clothing showed no rank or status markings, making it difficult to determine who held real power. President Min Seo stood as he entered the room. She was smaller than most humans, but carried herself with dignity. The consul appreciated leaders who understood protocol even in desperate situations. She gestured toward a chair that had been modified to accommodate his size. Translator Ji Woo activated her equipment. As the meeting began, the human language was simple but adequate for basic communication. The consul began with standard diplomatic greetings. Before moving to the real business, the humans needed to understand their position clearly. He activated his holographic display, showing images of other conquered worlds. The Zephyrians had resisted initially, but now lived peacefully on their assigned planet. The Thornaki had tried to fight, but accepted relocation after losing their first battle. Every species eventually recognized the wisdom of cooperation. The hologram showed Earth's new role in the galactic community. The planet would host 3 military bases and a fuel processing facility. The humans would be gone within 1 standard year, giving them time to gather personal possessions and say goodbye to their world. General Dong Hyan asked questions about the timeline and logistics. The Consul answered, patiently explaining how millions of humans would be transported safely to their new home. The desert world had been prepared with basic infrastructure and farming equipment. The human leaders exchanged glances as the presentation continued. The consul could see them struggling with the reality of the situation. Some looked angry, others appeared resigned. A few seemed to be calculating whether resistance was possible. President Minesio listened without interruption throughout the entire presentation. Her face remained neutral, but the consul could sense her internal conflict. She was trying to find some alternative that did not exist. The mathematics of the situation were simple and brutal. The consul's confidence grew. As he continued speaking, these humans would see reason like all the others. His fleet of 300 ships waited in orbit, ready to enforce compliance if necessary, but that would not be required. The humans were intelligent enough to recognize inevitable defeat. He explained the benefits of joining the galactic community. The humans would learn new technologies and meet other species. Their children would grow up in a universe much larger than their tiny planet. They would become part of something greater than themselves. The presentation concluded with images of successful relocations from other worlds, families living in new homes, children playing in alien gardens, farmers growing crops under different stars. The message was clear. Cooperation led to survival, while resistance led to destruction. When the consul finished speaking, the room fell silent. President Minesio thanked him for the explanation and requested time to consider the offer. The consul agreed, graciously giving them 12 hours to reach the obvious decision. As he returned to his ship, the consul felt satisfaction at another successful negotiation. The humans had listened carefully and asked intelligent questions. They understood the consequences of defiance and the benefits of cooperation. Their answer would be the same as all the others. The transport lifted off from the human building and returned to the command ship. The consul settled into his quarters, confident that Earth would soon join the galactic community. The humans were primitive, but they were not stupid. They would make the right choice. Through his viewing screen, he watched the human city below. Lights began appearing as darkness fell across the planet. Soon those lights would belong to the consul, and the humans would be just another relocated species. The galaxy would grow larger and stronger. The consul's confidence was complete and unshakable. He had never encountered serious resistance from any species. His reputation preceded him across the galaxy, making conquest easier with each world. No primitive species had ever been foolish enough to reject his generous offer. Tomorrow the humans would give their answer, and another world would fall under his control. The assembly hall filled with tension as the hour of decision arrived. President Minesio had spent the night walking through the empty corridors of the government building, thinking about her choice. The weight of 6 billion lives pressed down on her shoulders, but her mind remained clear. She had called her daughter Sujin the night before without telling her about the alien ultimatum. They talked about school and friends and weekend plans, normal things that might disappear forever after. Today, the conversation strengthened her resolve to protect the life her daughter knew. The other world leaders sat in their assigned seats, looking exhausted from the sleepless night. Some had tried to contact their military commanders, others had attempted to reach out to allies for support, but everyone understood that Earth stood alone in this moment. Consul Vexstar entered the hall with the same confident stride he had shown the day before. His ceremonial robes caught the light as he walked to his seat. The alien leader's forearms moved gracefully as he settled into his chair. His large black eyes surveyed the human faces around him. Translator Jiwoo checked her equipment one final time. The next few minutes would determine whether her planet lived or died. She had practiced the alien language all night, preparing for this moment. Her hands shook slightly as she adjusted the microphone. The consul looked relaxed and comfortable as he waited for Earth's response. He had been through this scene 47 times before, always the same result, always the same surrendering words. The humans would accept relocation and his fleet would claim another world. General Donghyun sat perfectly still, but his mind was racing. Human forces around the world waited for his signal. Nuclear submarines had moved into position. Fighter jets were fueled and ready. Missile silos stood open beneath the earth, all waiting for one word from their president. President Minesio stood slowly and walked to the podium at the front of the hall. Her footsteps echoed in the silent chamber. Every eye in the room followed her movement. The Consul leaned forward slightly, expecting the usual formal acceptance speech. The president reached the podium and gripped its sides with both hands. She looked directly at the alien leader without fear or hesitation. The moment stretched out like a held breath. The fate of humanity balanced on the edge of her next words. She thought about her childhood home with its small garden where her mother grew vegetables. She remembered the taste of her grandmother's soup and the sound of rain on the roof during summer storms. These memories belonged to Earth, and no alien force would take them away. The president opened her mouth and spoke one word into the microphone. Her voice carried clearly through the hall and across the planet. The word was simple and direct, and it shattered the consul's expectations like glass hitting stone. No, the single word hit the alien leader like a physical blow. His confident expression crumbled into confusion and disbelief. His forearms twitched with sudden agitation. The translator device buzzed frantically as if it could not process what it had heard. Jiwoo repeated the translation in the alien language, her voice trembling with emotion. The consul's blue skin began to darken with what humans would recognize as anger. His large black eyes widened as the impossible reality sank into his mind. For 400 years of conquest, no species had ever given such a simple, direct rejection. The consul had prepared for complex negotiations, desperate pleas for mercy, and lengthy diplomatic discussions. He had never prepared for a single word that dismissed everything. He offered General Dong Hai and felt his heart racing as he heard the president's response. Around the world, human military forces received the signal they had been waiting for. Radar systems powered up, missile guidance systems came online, submarine commanders prepared their weapons. The consul's shock lasted only seconds before transforming into rage. His blue skin continued darkening until it reached deep purple. His forearms trembled with fury as he processed the unthinkable situation. No primitive species had ever dared to refuse his generous offer. President Min Seo remained standing at the podium, waiting for the alien's response. She had known this moment would come from the instant she read the original message. Earth was humanity's home, and home was worth fighting for regardless of the odds. The alien leader's voice shook with anger as he responded through the translator. You do not understand what you have done. This is not a request. This is a declaration of your new reality. You will comply with our demands or face the consequences. The threat hung in the air like smoke, but President Min Seo showed no fear. She had expected this reaction. The consul's confidence had been built on the assumption that all species would surrender when faced with overwhelming force. That assumption was about to be proven wrong. Other world leaders sat frozen in their chairs, watching the confrontation unfold. Some looked terrified, others appeared determined, a few seemed to be calculating the military implications of the president's decision. The room buzzed with nervous energy. The consul stood abruptly, his ceremonial robes flowing around his tall frame. He began pacing back and forth like a caged animal. His people had ruled the galaxy for thousands of years. No backward species from a tiny planet would challenge his authority. You have seen our power, he snarled through the translator. You have seen what happened to other worlds that resisted. My fleet contains 300 ships, each one capable of destroying your largest cities. You cannot win this fight. President Min Seo listened to the threats without flinching. She had spent her life in politics dealing with bullies and tyrants. The consul's anger confirmed what she had suspected. His power was built on fear and intimidation. When faced with genuine resistance, he had no other strategy. The alien leader's confidence was cracking like ice in spring. He had never encountered defiance from a primitive species. His carefully planned conquest was falling apart because of one simple word. The humans were supposed to surrender, not fight back. As the consul continued his threats, President Min Seo thought about her daughter and all the other children on Earth. They deserved to grow up on the world their ancestors had built. They deserved to see the same stars their grandparents had watched. President's simple rejection had changed everything. The word no carried more power than any weapon in that moment. It represented humanity's refusal to surrender their home without a fight. The battle for Earth was about to begin. General Dong Hai quietly activated his emergency communication system. Military commanders around the world received the confirmation they needed. Earth's answer had been given. The time for diplomacy was over. The time for war had begun. The consul's fury filled the assembly hall like a storm cloud. His forearms gestured wildly as he made his final threats, but President Min Seo remained calm and steady. Her single word had shaken the foundation of galactic conquest. The alien leader stormed from the hall, his confidence replaced by rage and disbelief. The humans had done the impossible. They had rejected his offer with a simple word. Now he would have to prove his threats were real. The battle for Earth would begin within hours. The command bridge of the consul's flagship buzzed with activity as Vexstar stormed back from his meeting with the humans. His ceremonial robes swept behind him like a dark cloud. His forearms moved frantically as he shouted orders to his crew. The impossible had happened, and he would make the humans pay. The alien officers had never seen their commander in such a state. His blue skin had turned deep purple with rage. His large black eyes burned with fury. The careful composure he had maintained for centuries was completely shattered by a single word from a primitive species. "Prepare the demonstration strike," he commanded, his voice echoing through the bridge. "Target their largest population centers. I want them to see what defiance costs. Choose 10 cities and reduce them to ash. The humans will learn respect through suffering." His weapons officer hesitated for a moment before responding. "Sir, the humans have no military capability that threatens us. Would it not be better to negotiate? Further, their technology is primitive, but their planet has strategic value." The consul's rage exploded at the suggestion. His forearms trembled with fury. "You dare question my orders? No species has ever rejected the consul's offer. These humans will serve as an example to every world in the galaxy. Compliance is not optional on Earth." President Min Seo returned to her office, knowing that the alien response would be swift and brutal. She had condemned millions of people to death with her single word, but surrender would have condemned billions to slavery. The choice was terrible but necessary. General Darhayan coordinated the global defense from his command center deep beneath Seoul. Military bases around the world reported their readiness. Human forces were pitifully small compared to the alien fleet, but they would fight with everything they had. The first alien attack began at noon Seoul time. Energy beams struck down from orbit like lightning from a clear sky. The beams carved through buildings and streets with surgical precision, leaving smoking craters where neighborhoods had stood moments before the city of London was hit first. The ancient buildings crumbled like sandcastles as the alien weapon swept across. The Thames Tower Bridge melted into twisted metal. The Parliament building vanished in a flash of brilliant light. Millions of people ran through the streets screaming Tokyo was next. The alien beam cut through the heart of the city, reducing skyscrapers to dust. The ancient temples survived by mere chance while modern buildings collapsed around them. The attack lasted only minutes, but the damage would last forever. New York felt the alien fury as the beam struck Manhattan. The Statue of Liberty melted into slag. The Empire State Building simply disappeared. The aliens showed no mercy for the millions of innocent people caught in their demonstration of power. President Min Seo watched the destruction from her emergency bunker. Her heart broke with each report of casualties, but her resolve never wavered. This was the price of defiance, but slavery would have been worse. The human spirit could not be broken by violence. The consul stood on his command bridge, watching the destruction below. His anger had not cooled despite the massive show of force. The humans were supposed to be begging for mercy by now. Instead, their radio broadcast spoke of resistance and revenge. "Send the surrender demand," he ordered his communications officer. "Tell them they have 6 hours to accept relocation, or we will destroy every major city on their planet. The demonstration is over. The real attack begins if they refuse again." The alien message reached every communication system on Earth. Simultaneously, President Min Seo read the ultimatum with steady hands. The threat was clear and immediate. More cities would burn unless humanity submitted to alien rule, but something unexpected was happening in the streets of damaged cities. Instead of panic and surrender, the humans were growing angry. Rescue workers pulled survivors from the rubble while cursing the alien attackers. Citizens gathered in public squares, raising their fists at the sky. The consul's demonstration had backfired completely. He had intended to break human morale. Instead, he had awakened something primal and dangerous. The humans were not cowering in fear. They were preparing for warfighter. Pilot Hyun-woo sat in his cockpit at Seoul Air Base watching the alien ships through his targeting system. His plane was tiny compared to the massive vessels, but he had trained his entire life for this moment. The aliens had murdered his people, and he would make them pay. Around the world, human military forces prepared for the impossible battle. Nuclear submarines surfaced in international waters, their missile tubes opening like the mouths of angry whales. Army units took positions in major cities knowing they faced overwhelming odds. The consul's confidence was cracking under pressure. For the first time in his career, his demonstration of power had only made the humans more determined to resist. Their primitive radio broadcasts spoke of sacrifice and honor, concepts he had not encountered in centuries. "Sir," his intelligence officer reported, "the humans are not requesting surrender terms. They are mobilizing their military forces for combat. Their leaders are calling for total resistance to our occupation." Vextar's fury reached new heights as he processed this information. Every other species had broken after seeing his power demonstrated. These humans were either incredibly brave or incredibly stupid. Either way, they would all die for their defiance. The alien leader paced his command bridge like a caged predator. His careful plans were falling apart. The humans were supposed to surrender after seeing his demonstration. Instead, they were preparing to fight back. The situation was spiraling out of his control. "Prepare the fleet for full assault," he commanded. "I want every ship ready for combat. These primitives need to learn that the consul is not challenged. The galaxy will see what happens to species that refuse our generous offer." On Earth, the 6-hour deadline approached like a gathering. Storm President Minesio knew that humanity's answer would be the same as before. The word "no" had started this conflict, and "no" would finish it. The human race would fight for their home. The consul's rage had consumed his judgment. He could not accept that a primitive species would dare to resist his authority. The humans had challenged the natural order of the galaxy, and he would restore it through violence. As the deadline passed without surrender, the alien fleet prepared for total war. The consul's fury would be unleashed upon Earth in a battle that would determine the fate of humanity. The galaxy had never seen anything like what was about to happen. The humans had said no to the most powerful force in the galaxy, and now they would face the consequences. The consul's fury would rain down from the stars, but the human spirit would not be broken. The dawn sky over Earth erupted in flames as the consul's fleet launched their full assault. Energy beams rained down from orbit like deadly rain. Each beam could destroy a city block in seconds. The alien ships moved with deadly precision, targeting military bases, government buildings, and population centers. Fighter pilot Haiyan Wu pushed his plane through the burning sky above Seoul. The alien vessels loomed like metal mountains in the air, his targeting system locked onto the nearest enemy ship. Even though his missiles seemed pathetically small against such massive targets. "This is Eagle 1 attacking the lead ship," he radioed to his squadron. "Follow me in and aim for the weapon ports. We might be small, but we can still hurt them." His plane screamed through the air as alien energy beams swept past him. The heat from the weapons scorched his hull, but he held his course steady. His missile launched from beneath his wings, streaking toward the alien ship like a spear of light. The explosion bloomed against the enemy vessel's hull, causing barely visible damage, but Haiyan Wu felt a surge of pride. His people were fighting back against impossible odds. The alien ship might be undamaged, but it was no longer untouchable submarine. Commander Sora guided her vessel through the dark waters of the Pacific Ocean. The alien ships above cast shadows on the surface like storm clouds. Her crew worked in silent concentration, preparing their nuclear torpedoes for launch. Target acquired. Her weapons officer reported, range 2,000 meters. The alien cruiser is holding position directly above us. Sora studied the target through her periscope. The alien ship was enormous, but her nuclear torpedo could still damage it. The explosion would also reveal their position to the enemy, but that was a risk they had to take. "Fire Torpedo 1, she commanded. The nuclear weapon streaked through the water toward its target. The explosion lit up the ocean like a second sun. The alien ship's shields flickered and failed under the nuclear assault. Its hull cracked and atmosphere vented into space. The enemy vessel began to list to one side as internal explosions rippled through its structure. The alien crew had never faced nuclear weapons before. Their shields were designed to stop energy beams, not the raw power of splitting atoms from His command bridge Consul Vexstar watched his ships take damage with growing disbelief. These primitive humans were actually hurting his fleet. Their weapons were crude but devastatingly effective when used with precision and determination. "Sir, we have lost 3 ships to human nuclear weapons," his tactical officer reported. "The enemy submarines are using stealth tactics. Our sensors cannot track them effectively." The consul's fury reached new heights as he watched his supposedly invincible fleet take casualties. No primitive species had ever inflicted such damage on his forces. The humans were fighting with a ferocity that defied all logic. On the ground, and Sol citizens refused to evacuate the targeted areas. Instead, they gathered in the streets, raising their fists at the alien ships overhead. Children drew pictures of human victory on the sidewalks. Elderly people shared stories of past wars humanity had survived. President Menesio broadcast to the world from her bunker beneath the city, her voice carried across every television, radio, and internet connection that still functioned. Her words gave strength to the defenders. "Fighting in Earth's darkest hour, we are not just fighting for our planet," she declared. "We are fighting for the right to exist as free beings. The aliens think they can break our spirit through violence. They are wrong. The human race has never surrendered to tyrants, and we will not start today." The battle raged across the globe as human forces threw themselves at the alien fleet with desperate courage. Army units fired surface-to-air missiles at enemy ships. Air Force pilots rammed their planes into alien vessels when their weapons ran out. In London, the survivors of the alien attack worked together to rebuild their city while the battle raged overhead. They pulled wounded people from the rubble and set up field hospitals in the ruins. Their determination could not be broken by mere destruction. Alien weapons were more advanced, but human tactics were unpredictable and chaotic. The consul's forces had trained to fight organized military units, not scattered groups of determined defenders who appeared and disappeared like ghosts. General Dong Haiyan coordinated the global defense from his command center. The reports coming in were both encouraging and terrifying. Human forces were inflicting real damage on the alien fleet, but the cost in lives was enormous. "Sir, the enemy has lost 12 ships, but we have lost 60% of our air force," his aide reported. "Our nuclear submarines have been effective, but the aliens are adapting their tactics." The general studied the tactical display showing the battle across Earth. The human forces were scattered and outnumbered, but they were fighting with a unity that surprised even him. People who had never held weapons were joining the fight. In Tokyo, the surviving citizens worked to repair their communication systems while fighter planes battled alien ships overhead. The city's defenders used the rubble from destroyed buildings as cover while they fired rockets at enemy vessels. The consul's demonstration attack had backfired completely. Instead of breaking human morale, it had awakened something primal and dangerous. The humans were not fighting as separate nations, but as one unified species defending their home. "The human resistance is stronger than expected," his intelligence officer reported. "They are not following standard military doctrine. Their tactics are chaotic but effective. Our forces are taking casualties we did not anticipate." Vexstar's confidence was cracking under the pressure of unexpected resistance. His fleet was supposed to crush these primitives within hours. Instead, the battle had lasted 2 days and the humans were still fighting. The alien leader had conquered 47 worlds, but none had prepared him for humanity's response. These creatures fought with a passion that defied military logic. They threw themselves at his ships with suicidal bravery that somehow worked. Fighter pilot Hen Wu led his remaining squadron through the debris field that had once been the alien escort fleet. His plane was damaged and his weapons were nearly empty, but he pressed on toward the enemy command ship. "This is Eagle 1 to all units," he radioed. "We are going to take down their flagship. Follow me in and aim for the bridge. The battle ends when their leader falls." The human pilots screamed through space toward the massive command vessel. Their small fighters looked like insects attacking a giant, but their determination was absolute. They would protect their world or die. Trying the battle for Earth had become something the galaxy had never seen. A primitive species was fighting back against the most powerful force in the universe, and somehow they were winning. The human spirit could not be broken by superior technology. The morning sky over Seoul was clear and blue when everything changed. Forever Taeho was drinking his coffee on the roof of the government building when he saw it first. A shadow fell across the city, but there were no clouds in the sky. He looked up and dropped his coffee cup. The ceramic shattered on the concrete. But he did not notice above the city hung something impossible, a ship so large it covered 10 city blocks. Its surface was dark metal that seemed to absorb light instead of reflecting. The ship made no sound as it descended slowly toward the earth. People in the streets below stopped walking and pointed at the sky. Some took pictures with their phones, others ran away screaming. Tae-ho grabbed his radio and called the emergency line. His hands shook as he spoke into the device. The person on the other end did not believe him at first, until they looked outside their own window and saw the same impossible sight. The alien ship was real, and it was here inside the ship console. Vexstar stood in his command chamber, looking down at the human city through the viewing screen. The buildings looked like toys from this height. The humans moved through their streets like tiny insects. He had seen this same scene on 47 other worlds. Each time the local species reacted the same way, fear followed by confusion, followed by surrender. The consul was tall, even for his species. His blue skin had darker patterns that showed his high-rank 4 arms extended from his torso, each one decorated with golden bands that marked his victories. His eyes were large and black without visible pupils. When he spoke, his voice carried the authority of someone who had never been disobeyed. 3 days ago, the consul had sent a message to Earth. The humans had primitive communication systems, but they could understand basic galactic languages. The message was simple and direct. Earth would be claimed by the Galactic Council. Its human population would be relocated to make room for more important uses. The response from Earth had been equally simple. They requested a meeting. The consul found this amusing. Most species begged for mercy or tried to negotiate better terms. The humans wanted to talk. This showed they understood their position. They would surrender peacefully like all the others. President Min Seo sat in her office reading the translated message for the 20th time. The words never changed no matter how many times she read them. The aliens wanted Earth. They wanted to move all humans to another planet. They gave Earth 24 hours to decide. The message had arrived through every communication system on Earth at the same time. Television broadcasts were interrupted. Radio stations stopped their music. Internet connections redirected to display the alien text. The message appeared in every human language, simultaneously showing technology far beyond anything. Earth Posesedman Seo had been president for 3 years. She had dealt with economic problems, natural disasters, and international conflicts. But nothing had prepared her for this. An alien species was demanding her planet. The entire world looked to her for leadership, and she had no idea what to do. She called an emergency meeting with world leaders. They would meet in the underground bunker beneath Seoul. The bunker had been built during the war decades ago. It was designed to survive nuclear attacks, but no one knew if it would protect them from alien weapons. The phone calls were difficult. Most leaders refused to believe the message was real. They thought it was some kind of elaborate hoax or terrorist attack. Only when their own scientists confirmed the alien ship was real did they agree to come to Seoul. The meeting was scheduled for that evening. General Dong Hyan arrived at the bunker first. He was a career military officer who had spent his life preparing for war. But this was different from any conflict he had studied. The enemy had technology that made human weapons seem like sticks and stones. His soldiers were brave, but bravery might not be enough. The general brought files containing everything Earth knew about the alien ship. Their radar systems could barely detect it. Their satellites showed it was made of materials that did not exist on Earth. The ship generated its own gravity field and seemed to ignore the laws of physics. Other world leaders began arriving as the sun set over Seoul. The British Prime Minister looked pale and shaken. The Russian president spoke in whispers to his advisors. The Chinese premier kept checking his phone for updates from his military. Everyone understood the gravity of the situation. Translator Ji Woo was the youngest person in the room. She had studied alien languages at university as a hobby, never expecting to use her skills for something this important. The alien message had been complex, but she had managed to decode most of it. The basic meaning was clear enough. The meeting began at 8 in the evening. President Min Seo stood at the head of the table, looking at the faces of people who controlled the fate of billions. The weight of responsibility pressed down on her shoulders like a mountain. She began by reviewing what they knew. The alien ship was real and powerful. The message was genuine and urgent. Earth had less than 20 hours to make a decision that would affect every human being alive. The choice was simple in its horror: submit to alien rule or face destruction. The room erupted in discussion. Some leaders wanted to negotiate, others suggested trying to buy time with delaying tactics. A few talked about military resistance, but the numbers were overwhelming. The alien fleet in orbit contained hundreds of ships, each one larger than anything humans had ever built. As the arguments continued, President Min Seo found herself thinking about her childhood. She remembered playing in the park near her home, the smell of her mother's cooking, the sound of rain on the roof during summer storms. All of these memories could disappear if the aliens took Earth. The discussion went on for hours. Leaders shouted at each other in different languages. Translators worked frantically to keep up with the chaos. Some people left the room in frustration. Others paced back and forth, trying to think of solutions that did not exist. Through it all, the alien ship waited silently above Seoul. Its presence was a constant reminder that time was running out. The humans could argue and debate, but the deadline would not change. In 18 hours, they would have to give their answer. President Min Seo finally called for quiet. The room fell silent as everyone looked at her. She had made her decision during the long hours of debate. She would not abandon Earth to alien conquerors. She would not relocate humanity to some distant world. Earth was home, and home was worth fighting for. Other leaders stared at her in shock. They had expected her to find some diplomatic solution. Instead, she was talking about resistance against impossible odds. The alien technology was centuries ahead of human science. Their numbers were overwhelming. Their weapons could destroy cities in seconds, but something in President Min Seo's voice made them listen. She spoke about the human spirit, about the willingness to fight for what was right even when victory seemed impossible. She reminded them of all the times in history when humans had faced overwhelming odds and somehow found a way to win. As the meeting ended and the leaders returned to their countries, President Min Seo stood alone in the bunker. Tomorrow, she would give Earth's answer to the alien council. She already knew what that answer would be. The word was simple and direct, and it would change everything. Outside the bunker, the alien ship continued its silent vigil over Seoul, waiting for humanity's surrender. The third day of battle dawned over a changed Earth. The alien fleet that had once darkened the sky now hung in scattered, burning pieces. Human fighters weaved through the debris field like victorious eagles. The impossible had happened, and humanity had won. Captain Taemin guided his damaged fighter through the wreckage of what had been the most powerful fleet in the galaxy. His plane's hull was scorched and his weapons were empty, but he was alive. The alien ships around him told a different story. Consul Vexstar sat in his ruined command chair, staring at reports that made no sense to his alien mind. His fleet of 300 ships had been reduced to fewer than 50 broken vessels. The humans had fought with such fierce determination that they had achieved the unthinkable. Sir, the remaining ships are requesting permission to retreat, his communications officer reported. Our casualties are approaching 70%. The human resistance has exceeded all projections. The consul's worldview lay in ruins around him. Every species in the galaxy had surrendered to his demands. The humans had chosen to fight instead, and their defiance had cost him everything. His reputation, his fleet, and his authority were gone on Earth. President Min Seo emerged from her bunker to find Seoul celebrating in the streets. People danced around the wreckage of alien ships that had crashed in the city center. Children climbed on the twisted metal, while adults cheered their victory. The cost of victory had been terrible. Cities lay in ruins. Millions of people were dead or wounded. The human military had been nearly destroyed, but they had protected their world and proven something important to the galaxy. We have won more than just a battle. President Min Seo announced to the cheering crowds, "We have won the right to determine our own fate. No alien force will ever again assume that humanity can be conquered through threats and violence." The news of Earth's victory spread across the galaxy faster than light. Other conquered species began to whisper about the humans who had said no to the Council. Rebellion sparked on worlds that had accepted alien rule for centuries. The Zephyrians, who had been mining crystals in asteroid belts, threw down their tools and declared independence. The Thornaki, who had been building ships in orbital factories, seized control of their vessels and turned them against their masters. The galactic order that had existed for millennia began to crumble, as species after species followed humanity's example. The word "no" had become a rallying cry for freedom across the stars. The Consul's empire was falling. Apart Vexstar received reports of rebellion from dozens of worlds as his battered fleet limped toward the edge of the solar system. The humans had not just defeated him, they had inspired others to resist. His empire was collapsing. "How is this possible?" he asked his remaining officers. "We have superior technology, overwhelming numbers, advanced weapons. How did these primitives defeat us?" His tactical officer studied the battle reports with confusion. "Sir, the humans fought with tactics we have never encountered. They showed no regard for their own safety. They seemed to value their planet more than their lives." The consul could not understand such thinking. His species valued order, efficiency, and survival. The humans had thrown themselves into battle knowing they would die. Their willingness to sacrifice everything for their home was incomprehensible. Fighter pilot Hyun-woo landed his damaged plane at Seoul Airbase and climbed out to find his ground crew cheering. The alien fleet was retreating toward deep space. Their massive ships looked smaller now as they fled from Earth's defenders. "We did it," his mechanic shouted over the noise of celebration. "We actually beat them. The aliens are running away like scared children." Hanwha looked up at the sky where alien ships were disappearing into the darkness of space. The victory felt unreal. After 3 days of desperate fighting, Earth had faced the greatest military force in the galaxy and won. The surviving alien ships gathered at the edge of the solar system before jumping to hyperspace. The consul's flagship was among them, its hull cracked and atmosphere leaking. The mighty vessel looked like a wounded animal fleeing from predators. Vexstar stood on his damaged bridge, watching Earth shrink behind them. The blue planet had seemed so small and helpless when he first arrived. Now it loomed in his memory like a symbol of defeat. The humans had broken something inside him. "Sir, where should we set course?" his navigation officer asked. "Our homeworld will demand explanations for this defeat." The consul closed his large black eyes and tried to process what had happened. His people had ruled the galaxy through fear and overwhelming force. The humans had shown that superior technology meant nothing against absolute determination. News of the battle reached the galactic capital within hours. The consul's masters stripped him of all rank and authority. His defeat had shown other species that the empire could be challenged. The age of easy conquest was over on Earth. Humanity began the long process of rebuilding. Their damaged world cities that had been destroyed were rebuilt stronger than before. The alien attack had united the human race in a way that peace never could. President Min Seo stood in her office looking out at Seoul's skyline. The city bore scars from the battle, but it was alive and growing. The people had learned something important about themselves during the darkest hours. Rediscovered that the human spirit cannot be broken by threats or violence, she said to her advisors. "The aliens thought they could force us to surrender. They learned that some things are worth dying for. The galaxy would never again underestimate the species that had looked at impossible odds and simply said no." Earth's rejection had become a symbol of resistance that would inspire rebellions for generations. Fighter pilot Hyun-woo visited the memorial being built for the battle's casualties. The names of the dead covered massive walls, but their sacrifice had saved their world. The human race had paid a terrible price for freedom. Captain Taemin helped repair the damaged fighter planes that had won the battle. The aircraft looked small and fragile compared to the alien ships they had defeated, but they had carried the courage of their pilots into battle. The consul's empire began to fragment as more species followed humanity's example. The word "no" had shattered the chains that had bound the galaxy for thousands of years. Freedom was spreading from star to star. Years later, children would learn about the day Earth said no to the galaxy's greatest power. They would understand that courage and determination could overcome any enemy. The human spirit had proven itself stronger than any weapon. The battle for Earth had ended, but the war for galactic freedom had just begun. Humanity's simple rejection had started a revolution that would reshape the universe. The galaxy would never be the same again.